Hello, I'm Dr. Arlen Four, the chairman and founder of Activator Methods International. And today we're bringing you Activate Your Practice from Las Vegas, Nevada at the Parker Seminar, which allows me to interview some people that would be difficult to get a hold of. And our interviewee today is Dr. Ray Foxworth, the CEO and founder of ChiroHealth USA. And welcome to the program, Ray.
Thank you so much, Arlen. I appreciate the opportunity.
What I'd like to ask you is, what got you into chiropractic to start with?
It was strictly by chance. I often say I didn't choose chiropractic, it chose me. Had nothing to do with the fact that my mother and father were both chiropractors. Growing up, I never, ever even thought about following in their footsteps. That's just what my parents did. And I happened to go to one of the state association meetings. I was in junior college in a pre-med program back at that time, and I heard Zig Ziglar speak. And the longer I heard him talk, it's like, even though you're the kid of a chiropractor, you don't understand, you don't have the full depth of understanding of chiropractic. And Zig really did a great job in explaining chiropractic in a way I hadn't heard before. And that's when I decided I want to go to chiropractic college. And I'll never forget, I went to my folks' house probably about a week later, and I said, I think I want to go to chiropractic college. And they're going, what? Because they never really pushed me or encouraged. Had they done that, I probably wouldn't have. But I remember my dad saying, well, you've thought about it for a week now. Have you saved up any money? And I opened my wallet. I said, yeah, I got $14. And literally within, there's the power of the made-up mind. Literally in 3 weeks, we packed up our Datsun B210 with my wife and son at the time and moved to Kansas City and never looked back.
Interesting. What drives you to improve the profession?
A very personal story, and I'll try not to be tearful, but I often am when I tell this story. My mom divorced my dad. All she ever did was work either as a chiropractor's assistant and then became a chiropractor. And when she opened her practice in Yazoo City, Mississippi, home of Zig Ziglar,
yes,
it was a struggle, a horrible struggle. And I'll never forget, as I tell the story one night, my mom's practice was in the front of the house. Me and my two sisters and mom lived in the back of the house, shared the same room for bedrooms. And I heard my mom crying. And my sister Nancy says, Mom, what's wrong? And she said, honey, we're down to our last 37 cents and I don't know where the next new patient's coming from. And so I didn't realize the impact that had on me at that time, but I never, ever want to see another chiropractor ever have to go through anything like that. And so part of my purpose, cause, and passion is to try to elevate the profession, have us compensated fairly, just not be. It's a shame that someone who chooses a healthcare profession as powerful as chiropractic would ever be in that situation. And unfortunately, a lot of doctors do struggle because, as I've said recently, they're in practice, but they're not in business. And they got to understand that I don't care how good of a chiropractor you are, if you're not cash flow positive, if you're not making money, you can't serve people.
Exactly. What's changed since 1985?
Oh boy. When I got licensed in 85 in our state, well, keep in mind we're the second to last state to even be licensed. So when I came into the state, we couldn't draw blood, we couldn't do nutrition, we couldn't use therapies, just a lot of limitations. The medical association in the state at the time clearly was very controlling, like they are in a lot of states. So much so to the point that there was actually in our scope of practice law, in our law itself, it said nothing in this act shall permit a chiropractor to be reimbursed under workers' comp or personal injury.
That
so
was
they tried to starve us. That was in the law. Yeah. So fast forward, when I got to the state, quite frankly, I was pissed off at the state of affairs, and I started showing up and getting involved. And I tell folks I've lived the chiropractic dream. We went from where I was with my mother in that experience to literally within 20 years, because I did show up and I did say yes, and I got outside of the four walls of my practice and way out of my comfort zone. I saw things. Well, we got the workers' comp thing turned around by a Supreme Court case. We got reimbursed by personal injury. Probably one of the biggest things is, I'll tell a short story. I would request x-rays from a hospital, from another doctor's office, and they would tell you, well, we don't share x-rays we don't work with chiropractors. So being young and having parents who never told me there was something I couldn't do, I said, I'm going to change this. And I had some goals. I wanted to be on staff at a hospital. I wanted to be involved in healthcare bigger than chiropractic. And so I wrote, this is on the heels of the Wilk case. And remember all the organizations in medicine that had to publish that they were guilty of violating the Sherman Antitrust Act? Well, I had all of those statements from all of those different entities in medicine. I wrote an 11-page letter and sent it to over 500 MDs in our town. And I got a couple of calls back from them saying, I don't know who you are, but don't you ever send me anything again? I said, okay, you're off the Christmas list. But literally within a couple of days' time, I had a couple of calls from orthopedics and family practice docs. And because what I did in the letter, I said, here's who I am, here's my background, here's my training, here's when you ought to consider referring to a chiropractor, and here's when you should never refer to a chiropractor. And literally within a matter of weeks' time, I got invited to speak to an orthopedic group at River Oaks Hospital. Fast forward, I got invited to speak at University Medical Center to the Department of Neurosurgery, anesthesiology. Ultimately, I ended up being appointed to the State Board of Health, first chiropractor ever on the Board of Health. All hell broke loose, as you can well imagine.
Yes.
To give you a little backstory on that, when I left the Board of Health after 12 years, I was given a book by the state health officer. It was from 1913, and it was a letter to all the district health offices to send in copies of ads and report the names of people that were practicing chiropractic, because their intent was to try to round them up. Yeah, excuse me, it was 1933. And so, seeing that was just amazing to go from that kind of attitude toward the profession to actually I ended up being chairman of the State Board of Health for 2 years. And then probably the next biggest thing is because I was involving myself in things outside of chiropractic, I was on the Workers' Comp Physician Advisory Committee and got to meet a lot of orthopedics and physical medicine and rehab docs. And I'll never forget, I got the call from my buddy Raul Vora, and he said, we're going to build a spine center, and we want you to be a part of it.
Wow.
And I'm going like, wow, I don't have the pockets for that. Little did I know that the others didn't either. But my wife said, Ray, we don't have the money to do that. And I said, you just got to believe. You got to show up. And so now, my practice, I'm out of practice now. I sold it in 2020, but, it's on the campus of New South Neurospine with 7 neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgery, physical medicine rehab, chiropractic, PT. If it's got anything to do with the spine, that's in that facility. That's what can happen in one generation if you show up and you say yes. And so that's part of my encouragement to our profession. We sit and complain and gripe about the state of affairs, but we don't get out and do anything about it. We wait on someone else too many times.
What drove you to start ChiroHealth?
That would be my Miss Jones story. So I was taking care of this family, husband, wife, a couple of kids, and at that time I'm probably charging, $35, $40 a visit. They had no insurance at all, so I gave them a break on their coverage. Well, fast forward, they were involved in an auto accident, and so I billed out my normal fees, which were much higher than the $35 or $40. And I come into the room one day, and there's Miss Jones and her family there, and she just, you ever walk into a room and you know something's wrong?
Yes.
Well, something was really wrong. This nice little lady that I've been, taking care of for years, I said, Miss Jones, you look like something wrong. She said, it is. She said, I saw what you billed the insurance company, and I know what you were having us pay as cash patients. And it's guys like you ripping off the insurance companies that keep us from affording health care. And I was speechless for about 10 seconds, which is a long time for me. And I said, no, it's guys like me that bend over backwards. I said, but I made a horrible mistake. I never let you know that I was trying to help you or what my actual fees were. She said, well, I don't care. I've reported you to your board and to the Attorney General. Fortunately, it wasn't against the law in our state to have a dual fee schedule then. But what it made me start thinking of, there is no way that looks good in the eye of a patient.
Yes.
So I started looking at what are the models out there, and I found the discount medical plan model, which basically allows doctors to bill higher fees, to get paid well when insurance is available, but then have a legal contractual discount for those patients that don't have health insurance or have limited benefits. So it was out of what I call the most painful day in practice, turned out to be a great solution.
And as I understand it, it was a way to do a legal cash practice.
It is, and I discourage doctors from saying, I'm an all cash practice, because the reality is, we've always, as chiropractors, we love helping our patients, and so we bend over backwards to help them. But you've heard that saying, no good deed goes unpunished.
Yes.
Well, there are rules and regulations from your board of examiners, from your provider agreements, from the Attorney General to the OIG and Medicare, and a lot of those rules conflict. Well, if you use that DMPO, the Discount Medical Plan Organization model, all of that goes away, because it's now just another contract that you have. Blue Cross, Aetna, and Cigna don't pay us all the same thing for a 98940. So why can't we do that for our underinsured and limited benefits? You can if you go through a DMPO, which is regulated by the Department of Insurance. So we spent an awful lot of money in getting regulated, and we're now in 48 states.
To me, for a new practitioner, it's an absolute must, to have a legal cash practice. And
Absolutely.
That's what I'm seeing that you've done, is to make it legal and follow the law and end up without any trouble.
That's it. It started out as strictly a response to a problem I had in my office, and then as I talked with other folks, everybody was having this type of issue, and because of my background and some other things I had done, that's really what made me start looking at, there's got to be a solution out there, and it appears to have been it.
Well, what's your number one piece of advice you'd give other chiros and business owners?
Clearly, it would be, as I said earlier, get outside of your comfort zone. In fact, my daughter gave me a little pen that says, life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And I can tell you that all the blessings that I've had, and the ability to do things that literally in a generation from where my parents were, literally for two reasons. I showed up, I said yes, and I was blessed to have parents that never told me there was something I couldn't do. And my other influences, probably, I mentioned Zig Ziglar earlier. We live next door to his sister and his two nephews, and so I'd always been a Zig Ziglar fan, and I love what he says. You can have anything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And so that's kind of been my focus, and that's what I would encourage doctors to do. Number one, realize you're in practice and in business, and to get outside of your comfort zone. If you want to build your practice, if you want to impact your community, you're not going to do it inside the four walls of your practice and just complaining, oh, poor, pitiful me.
Yes.
You got to get out, get up, and go do something.
Exactly. Well, I can't thank you enough for the interview, because you have given the profession a new lease on life for having the cash practice legally And I think that's a great contribution. So thank you for today, and thank you for taking time. It was a pleasure. And
Thanks, Arlen.
I've always admired you, so I just wanted to get you on this cast, and I knew at Parker we could find you.
Well, I appreciate it. The feeling is mutual.
Well, thank you very much.